Some parts of today's video have been dubbed due to some technical issues when filming. Hopefully this should not hinder your viewing pleasure. The higher end cars are not necessarily my thing, but every encounter I've ever had with Porsche has always exceeded my expectations, and some of these early designs now actually really do look timeless. Here we've got one of the earlier 911 Carrera Rs guys, so it's a 2.7 litre engine in this one. One of those cars I think Porsche weren't actually even sure if they'd sell when they initially came out, but really a collectible piece these days. And you can still see the design language coming from these earlier cars like this 356 and then into 911. Obviously perhaps no accident that they do look a little bit Beetle reminiscent, but I am assured that under the skin they are actually quite different. Hello, voiceover Mark here once again. Now, the car you can see behind me here is a Porsche 928. Now this is a car that actually came out in the 70s, but I always think of it as being more of a 1980s car. When this launched, it must have looked like something from outer space, and I think for a long time they did look a bit odd, but they've actually aged really, really well now. It was quite a technologically advanced car for its time, with a lot of fancy electronics. These headlamps actually pop up and remind me very much of the ones on the Lamborghini Miura. Perhaps if 911s are more your thing, something like this Porsche 993, the last of the air-cooled, or maybe something a bit older like this 911 Targa, this one being a soft window version, which I don't think I've actually seen one with the soft rear window before. If, like me, you're a child of the 80s though, the 911 you'll remember will be the 930. So here, to one side of me, I've got the Martini Edition. And on the other side, a 930 LE, very much like the slant nose, but without the pop-up lights. As you can see, we've got the vents in these rear quarters here, and I believe that the LE did have a slight power increase over the standard turbo. And obviously in white, there are very few cars that could look more 1980s than a white Porsche 930. But the 911 isn't the only car coming of age here. I can't believe it's been 25 years since we first saw the Porsche Boxster. Early cars were criticised for the rear end looking a lot like the front end, but in reality, these really were a bargain, a cut price 911 in a sense, but probably with better handling with its mid-mounted engine. So a couple of other models introduced in the 70s and remaining popular throughout the 1980s were the Porsche 924 and the 944. The 924 coming first and was perhaps the cheaper introductory model. They did do a turbo version no later on. The 944 looked more muscular with the wider arches on there, and was probably the more highly regarded of the two. The engine in them was pretty much half of the engine from a 928. I'm not sure if these cars were another joint project between Porsche and Volkswagen or not. I know they were criticised for the engine in some of the early geysers, but there were more powerful turbo versions came later. We've got a Mercedes 320 SL The SL was a flagship for Mercedes back in the day, and I do remember these quite well. The styling was quite nice, quite elegant for the time. This one's got the hardtop on. A very expensive car. I remember in the late 90s seeing Mercedes SL in the showroom, and I think it was to the tune of about £70,000 back in, as I say, the late 1990s. They were available with some sizable engines as well. I think there might have been a V8, and I know there was a V12 as well. Mercedes V12s, I say, are pretty much bulletproof provided you service them. A service is probably not cheap on one of those, I will admit, but supposedly, if well looked after, they are a fantastic engine. When I was a child, this is what a Vauxhall Astral looked like, and this being an Astra L, I presume is a fairly lowly spec. But yeah, this would have been quite typical transport for many families in Great Britain throughout the 1980s. Both bubble cars were quite popular in much of Europe and Britain through the 1960s. It was a cheap way of getting on the road, and probably felt better than a motorcycle, especially in bad weather. There were a variety of different models available. This is probably one of the more popular ones. That soft top is quite useful as well, because obviously these doors you access from the front, so in a front end collision, up and over would be your means of escape. So quite recently I did a video at a Land Rover event which seemed really popular, so I couldn't not show you these Land Rovers here today. Obviously these being Defenders, the ones in the recent video were Series Land Rovers. Of course, not all are Defenders, there are some earlier examples here too. This being, by the look of it, a Series 1, I think. Yeah, got some Series 1s here. As we can tell by the flat sides on there, also the headlamps recessed in the grille panel, as there were in some Series 2s as well. Obviously split windscreen there, and another one next to it with the soft cover on the back. Here we have the MG Club. Now I do quite like MGs. We've got a few MGBs along here, and I'm rather partial to an Mgb GT, especially earlier cars. This one's got the Roadstar wheels on, but it has got the chrome grille and bumpers as opposed to the rubber ones. Got another one here in blue, a car I really do like. I like the Roadster as well, but something about the Mgb, I think of it looking a little bit like the working class E-Type. It's got them same sort of proportions and that same shape towards the back end. Of course, MG did try to modernise a little bit throughout the year, so we had the MGF and then the TF, which we've got at the end, in addition to some of the M cars, so they made MG versions of cars like the Metro Maestro and Montego as well. Later we also got MG ZR, ZS, ZT, which were based on the Rover 25, 45 and 75 models. Some cars are probably deemed a classic from the moment of conception, things like this Bugatti Veyron. So I finally found the Renault Classic Car Club and the Renault Owners Club stand. I've only been looking all day for it, and I've had the pleasure of bumping into Shaun Henry. Shaun's another fellow Renault owner and member of the club, but he also does a rather interesting YouTube channel, Shaun Henry Engineering.
That's correct.
That's right. Does lots of interesting projects, usually based around Renaults.
Yep.
A couple of Renault 5s, Renault 10 is it?
That's it, yeah. Renault 10, yeah.
What are you on with at the minute then, Shaun?
At the minute, I'm in the process of rebuilding a Mark 1 rear suspension mounting, which loves to rot for fun on most of them.
That's the Renault 5 Mark 1, yeah?
Mark 1, yeah, the early one. The last month I've spent rebuilding the front driver's side footwell, inner seal, front wheel arch, inner seal on most of that side of the car. Yeah, lots and lots of welding. To be honest, welding's not my favourite part of it. When I get to mechanical bits, I really come into my own, but I'm getting there. The main thing is it's a lot of welding practice. I'm really getting into welding, how to do it, how to avoid pinholes, filling it all up nicely, stuff like that. So it's all self-taught. It might not be perfect all the time, but you can't be perfect to get there.
No,
you've got to learn, and that means a little bit of try and error. So yeah. But overall, so far, I'm really blooming happy with it.
Yeah, that's good. But it's right, it's like you say, it's all a learning curve. I've been doing quite a lot of learning with the Megane this year. Obviously, not welding yet though. I'm not quite that far on. So obviously, you've been doing a lot on the Mark II Renault 5, which is a car that's quite close to my heart. You've also displayed the Renault 10 this year at Festival of the Unexceptional, which I was quite jealous that I didn't get to go to that one. And you displayed in the concourse section, didn't you?
Yes, I think it was 2018, I drove my Mark 5 up to Buckinghamshire for the Festival Exceptional there, parked it in the classic zone, just the classic specified area, and then from there I drove to Lincoln to view the 10. And then obviously the following year, the Mark 1 was off the road because the 10 had gone on the road, but was at that point being hissy-fitty with overheating problems. So I took the Mark 2 on that time in 2019. 2020, obviously everything was complete flush out. 2021, I entered the 10 thinking to myself, well, it's been in the Practical Classics for a Store of the Year. Got 4th place, so I was really impressed with, considering. But yeah, it was rather nice indeed to just say, it's not perfect, but actually for a DIY home restoration where I'm not really a specialist at doing anything I've done to the car, and it's gone from a car that had sat on a driveway for 33 years since the tax expired in 1986. It had rebuilt brakes, all the front suspension had been taken apart, rebuilt, new ball joints, whatever. Gearbox was actually anything I didn't have to touch because the back end of those normally outlast pretty much the owner and the car itself. But yeah, everything on that car, and obviously the engine was rebuilt the other winter, so everything on that car has been gone through by by these bare hands, which somehow are actually quite clean today. But no, it was a blooming honour, to be honest with you, just to have it in concourse and say, he's not perfect, but actually he's a well-used car, and I've built it myself. I've done nearly 9,000 miles since he was put back on the road with 16,000 now.
I noticed it's been well used. Obviously, you displayed it. You also took a holiday in it and towed a trailer tent. So it's definitely, that's the thing though. It's okay working on the cars, but we want to enjoy them as well, don't we?
To me, it's not about. For me, part of my channel it's not about working on a car to then stick it in storage and put it out for a show day in the summer. It's meant to be a car that's used. Back in the day they were used, they're everyone's lady driver. So to me it's sort of, I can't stand the idea of you restore a car and stick it in the garage. I'd rather have a slightly patinaed car that is an absolute concourse, and then you can use it and enjoy it. The 10, as you said, went on a little family holiday with it. We took a tray tent on the back of it. I acquired the tow path from someone who gave me a Donor engine a couple of years ago, and it was like, sod it, let's just put it on the car. It would have done it if I've seen photos of them with caravans on back crying out. So I thought, let's do it. So I did that, and to be honest, if it can tow a trailer tent, you know, the engine's good, the gearbox good, the brakes is good, and the cooling system's good. So it sort of gives it a thorough proving and testing of
Exactly.
But it towed it really well actually. You just had to remember that you weren't in a new car, and if you hit that hill doing 50, you're going to be doing 40 by the time you get halfway up it. So you have to go with it sort of. I was trying to cruise at 50, but if I saw a hill, I was pushing for the top max on towing
to get a run up,
thinking you had the better momentum to get up the hill.
But
besides that, it did blooming well. But the best bit was, once you park the trailer tent up, you just go and have fun and forget the fact that you're in a classic car. You still get the experience, but you're not thinking, oh, we don't want to scratch it, I don't want to take it here, I don't want to take it there. We just went everywhere. Went down to there's a nice little harbour at Newhaven where some filming was actually taking place when I was visiting there for work, and I said, these cliffs are a lovely sight, the girlfriend will love to see this. So I surprised her and took her down there on holiday.
Brilliant.
And it was just great because you had the great big towing mirror that I got off eBay, 70s one, that literally bolts the roof gutter, hangs off the side, gives you the visibility for the trailer. That was just left on because it made life easier. It was just great because you laid back, and it was like looking at your grandma's family photo from the 70s in the old Renaults.
That's brilliant.
And they got the whole thing curving around like that. Absolutely loved it.
That's great.
Marvellous experience. To be honest, I think the next thing for me is, I put a tow bar on the Mark II to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling I might end up doing the same on the Mark 1, but obviously it's a case of finding one first.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, that's brilliant. It's been great talking to you, Shaun, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you at some more events in future.
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Now, this Renault Fuego was one of two that I noticed at the show, but by far and away the most dominant vehicle on this stand was the Renault 4, and the reason for that being the Renault 4 has reached a milestone of 60 years. So here on display we had a few different versions, including a van spec, but generally the Renault 4 was a very rugged vehicle, very utilitarian, much like the 2CV had been a few decades earlier. And in realising this, Renault did quite a lot with this vehicle, and there was even a conversion in 1980, a four-wheel drive version, that placed third in the Paris-Dakar Rally. The car was produced all over the world, and over 3 decades it sold over 8 million examples, making it the third most popular vehicle of all time. A personal favourite of mine would be this Renault 5 Monaco, one of 2 vehicles actually at the show. This other one just coming to shot was on another stand. Both examples were actually automatics, which I believe used the 1397 engine, but manual versions of the Monaco and GTX used the 1721cc engine found in many Renault and Volvo cars of that era. Externally, both the Monaco and GTX look similar, with colour-coded bumpers all round, colour-coded mirrors and side skirts. This Monaco had 5-spoke alloy wheels, which were also optional on the GTX. Where the cars were really set apart there was the interior, the Monaco getting this fantastic leather interior and 3-spoke leather steering wheel. You also got luxuries like power steering, remote central locking and a garment carrier under the parcel shelf. Now these cars are extremely collectible now, and one recently sold for several £1,000s. As the 80s moved into the 90s, Renault really moved things up a gear for this segment. So this Mark 1 Renault Clio behind me is an RT specification, and at the time of launch would have been top of the range prior to the luxurious Carrera and the sporty RSI 16-valve and Williams models being introduced. Now, the RT was available with some of the larger engines, including the 1390, and there was also a 1.8 litre 8-valve engine available in the RT. So another car which is actually celebrating a milestone, 30 years. This RT had quite a nice interior, more luxurious than lesser models, with improved seats, a different steering wheel and more comprehensive instrument cluster. By this point, panic mode's starting to set in because it's getting a bit late in the day and there was still quite a lot to see, so from here on out I am rushing a little bit, I'm afraid. So here I have the Peugeot 205 Open, notable as being one of the special editions of this very, very popular car from the late 1980s. Behind that we have the Peugeot 309 GTI, often forgotten, the 205 obviously being much more popular, but I think these are a really underrated car, supposedly handle better than the smaller 205 as well. So behind me here we have a 405 race car. Peugeots in the 80s and 90s were known for having outstanding handling. Here we have a Phase 1 306. Again, no matter which version you got, these cars drove very, very well indeed. The GTI 6 and Rally versions being extremely popular. So the 405 was another fantastic handling car from Peugeot. Typically the hot one to have was the MI16, but towards the end of production there was this left-hand drive only T16 model. Now these had constant four-wheel drive and a turbocharged engine producing over 200 horsepower, and was an extremely quick car for the early 1990s. Of course, the car that everyone always wanted and seemingly still does is the 205 GTI, especially the 1.9 litre versions, although fans of the car will argue all day long about which is the better one to have, the powerful 1.9 or the lightweight 1.6. Personally, I wouldn't discount the XS versions either, which are an incredibly light car. The Renault 5 Turbo and Turbo 2 use the old Cleon Font engine, 1.4 litre. In the Maxi Turbo, the engine capacity was increased to a 1500 and produced around 350 horsepower in a car weighing a little over 900 kilos. This is probably the craziest Super Mini of all times, with its mid-mounted engine and rear-wheel drive. Initially conceived for Group B rallying, and these cars change hands for serious money these days. So here we've got a Phase 2 Renault Clio, but it's no ordinary, Mark 2 Renault Clio. It's actually a V6 and it's in Phase 1, guys. Now these Phase 1s in particular were known for being very tricky on the handling. Phase 2 cars were a little bit refined, but still could be quite difficult on the limit. We're about 230 odd horsepower from the 24 valve 3 litre V6 mounted back here amidship where the rear seats would normally be. Obviously the car has a wider track as well than the standard Renault Clios. From memory, I think there may be Oz Super Turismos. I know Renault used Oz F1s as well on the 172 Clios when they come out in Phase 1, guys. Something very, very rarely seen outside of shows is Alpini. Alpini obviously having made a little bit of a comeback in recent years. So we had a couple of A310s and an original A110. There was actually a new A110 around the other side of the stand as well. These often been referred to as the French 911 due to the engines being slung right out the back. We have this fantastic Renault 21 which was race prepared. Now the 21 is quite an interesting car. It was in that era where saloon cars in particular were getting a much lower drag coefficient and becoming more economical. That didn't mean that they weren't fun though, and there was the Renault 21 Turbo, which are quite collectible now, and there was even a Quadra 4-wheel drive. But that's not where the madness ends, because you had different wheelbases, not only depending if you had saloon or estate, but depending on which engine you had, because some engines were transverse and some engines were north-south facing, and this dictated the length of the wheelbase as well. We've got some wonderful Saabs here, Saab 9000. I actually saw a couple of these on the road the other day. I believe these actually held some records as well for endurance. I think they were tested flat out for sort of near enough 24 hours, only stopping for things like fuel. Incredibly reliable and incredibly safe cars at the time. Now, these were developed in conjunction with Fiat and Lancia. So you had the Lancia Thema, which was the one with the Ferrari V8, very exciting. The Saab tended to use 4-cylinder engines, but they were turbocharged in many cases. There was also the Fiat Chroma based around the same car. Now they did start out as a joint project, but I believe that ended at some point during development due to safety issues, because apparently they did a crash test and Lancia thought the car was fantastic. Saab were less impressed, and at that point I believe they started to develop separately. An increasingly rare sight on our roads here in Britain now are these Saab 900s, this one being a turbo and a convertible. Next to that we've got a 3-door 900 turbo, an earlier one by the look of this. We're at Volvo Owners Club here. Sadly I am having to rush around a bit now, but some fantastic cars on display here as well. Volvo C70 around here, I do remember these coming out, and can't remember the last time I saw one, to be honest, but again it's one of those cars, being the Volvo, it's very understated and almost sort of sinks into the backdrop a little, but quite an understated classy design, and I can see these probably gaining a bit of a following at some point. Here we've got the Audi Owners Club, which seem to be displaying a number of S2s on stand. And Audi, quite a different company back then to what they are now. Certainly nowhere near as many of them on the road as what we have today. And we've got the Audi 80, which I always liked, especially the these ones here, the later ones. These really were a class act back in the day, but often people wanting German prestige cars tended to favour BMW or Mercedes back at that time, which was quite a shame. I think the Audi back then was actually more the thinking man's choice. Now it seems to be on everybody's company car list. Now here we've got the Triumph Acclaim, a product of the long-running Rover-Honda partnership, or Rondas as they were often known. This one is actually a CD trim, so top of the tree in Triumph Acclaim land, and this one has got electric windows in, for example, not only in the front but also in the back, which was unheard of on this class of car back in the 1980s. My grandfather actually had one of these before moving on to Rover SD3s, R8s and an HHR in the 1990s. For early version of the Triumph, I think these were 2000s or 2.5 PIs. Styling wise, they do look quite a lot like a Dolomite, but these were a much bigger car. A friend of mine who actually worked for the police force was in traffic about 30 years. He said they used to nickname these cars the Flying Dustbin. Not because there was a bad car, that they were trash or anything, more that I think the engine must have outperformed the handling of the car. But certainly nice to see one here today, especially this early one. I've seen the later cars at a few classic car shows, but I don't think I've seen one of these for quite some time. That interior looks beautiful as well. Obviously Triumph here in the UK, they did do a lot of family cars as well as motorcycles, but they would probably lean a little bit more towards the sportier arm of family motoring within British Leyland. Sadly, I am running out of time here today. I can see why Mr. Lloyd of Lloyd's Vehicle Consulting is actually spending a few days looking around, because you just can't cover all this in one day, especially when it took me over an hour to get in the car park this morning. So if your car was displayed here and I've not featured it, all I can do is apologise. As I say, I just really haven't had the time to get round everything in as much detail as what I may have liked to have done. I know I often say I don't really do Japanese, but Nissan 300ZX is a car I actually really like. It was available, I believe, as a 2-seater and a 2+2. Some people criticise them for being a bit heavier compared to some of the previous models, but I actually really like these, and I think probably actually made for quite a nice GT car. Likewise, same with Mitsubishi 3000 GT. You had things like 4-wheel steering and lots of other electronic goodness in there. Really advanced car for the time. These earlier ones had pop-up headlamps as well. Later ones went to a fixed headlamp design. Honda NSX. So the 1990s really was a fantastic time for Japanese sports cars. And some endured a little longer. Honda, as we went into the 2000s, we got the S2000, which is another fantastically engineered car with a very high revving engine. So another Ford Capri Mark II, which I thought were perhaps some of the rarest, but I must admit this year I have seen a few Mark II Capris. We've got the Mark I, which was the original saloon models as well. Over there we've got a Sierra Cosworth tucked away there, very nice indeed. Another Mark I Capri, quad headlights on these and wider arches as well. It's that 1974 Capri Mark I RS. Wow. 3.1 litre, quite a beast. Got a Mark III here, which got some headlamp covers on there, and it's rather nice shade of blue, a Capri Laser, this one. Very nice. certainly no expert on Fords, but I do like a Capri. For quite a long time these cars really were dirt cheap, but even a rather tatty one now would be quite valuable. Mark II 3000 GT, and we've got a Mark III Capri S there as well. Of course, in addition to Capris, we've got the Cortina and Escorts as well, because no classic car show would be complete without Ford Escorts. Now viewers, here's something you certainly do not see every day, the Ford Probe. Quite long awaited in the UK. We'd had the Capri, which had gone out of production in around 1986, I believe, or thereabouts. The Probe didn't come until the 1990s. I think the Americans might have actually had an earlier version of this vehicle. Probably one of the last cars to feature pop-up headlights as well. There was a 16 valve and the 24 valve 6-cylinder cars as well. One here that's been modified, and another standard car here. You really don't see these anymore. And to be honest, I don't think there was a particularly big seller in the UK at the time. I'm not sure how long the production one was, but I don't think it was very long. And again, we've got more Sierras, the Ford Escort RS, we've got a lovely Mark I RS Focus there as well. Again, becoming quite a collectible car now. And here we've got a Fiesta Mark III RS Turbo. Look very much like the Xr3is, but we've got the green piping and the 3-spoke alloy wheels on there. I'm not sure what power these put out, but obviously the XR2 was a normally aspirated 1600 engine, which I think probably, I don't know, maybe about 100 horsepower, give or take. Obviously these would have put out considerably more. Mark III Escort convertible and a Mark II Fiesta XR2. And a Mark I Fiesta XR2. Obviously very similar in body style, but obviously you see the wings, for example, on there look a little bit more rounded, as does the bonnet on the Mark II. Both got pepper pot wheels and the wheel arch spats, but there are a few cosmetic changes. Obviously the dashboard changed as well on these cars. A Mark IV Escort Xr3i. A friend actually had one of these in college. It was quite a nice car from what I recall, a grey one it was. And we've got some more Mark II Fiestas. The Fiestas did sell incredibly well in the UK and are still very popular cars. Here we've got a Super Sport, perhaps even rarer than the XR2s, an incredibly collectible car these days. We've got the 4-spoke alloy wheels on this car as well, and again looking fantastic with this black paint and the contrasting red stripe all the way along the side of the car. And who doesn't love a set of Mgb spot lamps? I've always been quite a fan of Ford Sierras. Here we've got the Ute version. Not all that common, we don't really buy Utes in the UK, but there were a few of these about. Now something that really is up my street is this XR4. Obviously the XR 4x4s as well. Everyone remembers the Cosworths, but this was the normally aspirated V6. I think it was probably the Cologne engine in these. I've always liked the Sierra, the ergonomic dashboard layout, for example, and the XR4s, these 3 doors, had this split rear quarter window design as well, whereas the Cosworths were like the other early 3-door body styles that had a larger single piece glass. We've also got the too high spoiler on the back of the car as well, and this cladding all the way around, and wheel arch spats, and this red stripe running down. Usually seen these in black or white. There may have been other colours available too. And of course there were 5-door versions of the Sierra as well, like these ones here. And these were a really popular car in the 1980s and 90s, obviously superseded by the Ford Mondeo, which sadly went out of production very, very recently. Some other markets, there was also an XR8 which used a V8 engine. I think possibly South Africa, Australia, I think maybe those cars. Sadly we didn't get them here in the UK. But Ford Granadas, I do love a Granada. We've also got a coupe version here which are incredibly rare. So this one being a 3 litre. In fact I think there's a Model Railway YouTube channel, and the gentleman on that channel has just restored a Granada coupe, quite like this one. Channel name is Everard Junction. Is a Model Railway channel predominantly, but I know he did do a video on the Granada as well, so if Granada coupes are your thing, you may wish to check that out. And we've got a Granada Estate. We did actually feature a Gear X Granada Estate on one of the previous videos when we went to the Lloyd Vehicle Consulting social event earlier this year. And that car owned by Mr. Coleman, the rubbish mechanic. Very, very similar to this one, although probably looking a little more standard. This one has obviously had some different wheels fitted on to the originals. So we're back in Hall 8 where we started this morning. It's a lot quieter now than it was, but sadly it is almost time to go. Quite a few Ford Capris in here, like this lovely Mark II Capri S. There's a Mark 1 further back over there as well. Sadly we just haven't had the time to get round it all. I did bump into Joseph Lloyd from Lloyd Vehicle Consulting, and he's spending 2 or 3 days here, and he'll end up with hours and hours of footage. There is just so much to see. So if I haven't got your car in again, I can only apologise. I just haven't managed to get around everything. If you've enjoyed this, please do let me know in the comments. It's nice to know that the viewers are enjoying the content we're putting out. Also, give the video a like. That lets YouTube know that you're enjoying it, and they'll suggest more things like this to you. If you haven't done already, please also consider subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything to do so. And if you subscribe and hit the bell notification, every time I put a video up, you'll be notified of it. So until next time, it's goodbye from me. Thanks for watching. Be sure to join us again next time on Mark on Motoring, where we will be back at the Harewood Hill Climb Circuit with the Harewood Drivers Club. We're going to have lots of interesting cars on display inside the barn, like this classic Saab 96 or this Nissan Skyline, Caterhams and MX-5s. Or perhaps something like this Lamborghini would take your fancy. But that's not all we've got, because this time we've got the local Bath clubs in attendance, with cars like this 70th anniversary model. And we've even got an appearance from an extremely rare car, this Abarth Assetto Corsa. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us next time.